been not quite a week since I gave some numbers about hospitalization and ICU numbers here in Ontario, and that came on the heels of our Prime Minister blaming the unvaccinated for the lockdowns. And I want to have another quick look at the numbers, although not much has changed in terms of the proportions. Unfortunately, however, there are more people in Ontario in our hospitals, which is disappointing and unfortunate. In terms of the number of unvaccinated people, or the percentage, it's roughly 27%, and those who are fully vaccinated make up the remainder, roughly 73%. And I'm ignoring for the time being those who are partially vaccinated. And those proportions are roughly the same as they were last week. The ICU story is changing a little bit. It is now pretty much 50-50, or I think 48% of those in the ICU with COVID are unvaccinated, and about 52% of those in the ICU are fully vaccinated. And this goes against the narrative we've been told that if you get your vaccine, well, first we were told if you get your vaccine, you won't get sick or you won't transmit the disease. And then it shifted, well, you might get sick, but you certainly, or you might transmit the disease, but you certainly won't get sick. Well, now you might get sick, but you certainly won't go to the hospital. Well, you might go to the hospital, but you certainly won't be in the ICU. And we see that changing over and over again. And despite these numbers here in Ontario, our press and our political leaders are continuing to blame the the unvaccinated for these problems. The Toronto Star editorial board printed something over the weekend that reads, the title of it is, "Time to Raise the Price for Those Who Still Won't Get Vaxxed." And I'll read just a little bit of it for you. Reason hasn't worked. Statistics haven't worked. Pleading, begging, scolding, and shaming haven't worked. Those refusing to be vaccinated against COVID-19 are doing great harm to the majority of responsible citizens, to Canada's healthcare system, to the overburdened men and women who work in it. It is their irresponsibility that is largely to blame for the restraints under which Canadians are currently required to live. That's almost exactly what our Prime Minister told us last week, that it's the unvaccinated who are to blame. And I think people are frustrated, and I think the news media and our politicians know that people are frustrated. And I think what they're trying to do, instead of having people look at our politicians, our policymakers, the news media who have supported them, our healthcare experts, and maybe question whether maybe some of them got it wrong, instead they're trying to shift the blame to really the minority of people who have chosen, for whatever reason, not to get vaccinated. We're told it's the unvaccinated who are to blame for all these problems. Yet it wasn't that long ago we were told that once we get 70 or 80% of the population fully vaccinated, that we can open up and get back to normal. Canadians certainly are frustrated, but is it the unvaxxed really that are causing the frustration? Or has it been the politicians, the mainstream news media who have supported them, the experts who first told us once we get vaccinated, then we don't have to worry about getting sick or getting the virus. We were told that the way to shut this down is just for everyone to get vaccinated, and for the most part, people have complied. And I don't blame the people who chose to get vaccinated. It's probably a fairly reasonable thing to do. I don't hold that against anyone who's decided to do that. And I think most Canadians did it thinking that, well, once we do that, then we can get back to normal. And our politicians have continually just moved the goalposts on that. And the question is, how much longer are we going to listen to those who are in authority about these things? We've been told for over a year now that vaccines are our only way out of this pandemic. Yet, even now, our hospitals are filling up, even though most people do have a full vaccine. The question remains, why haven't we been doing more to augment our health system over these last 18 months or so? I know that building ICU beds is expensive and doesn't come quickly. Training up nurses doesn't happen at the drop of a hat. But we've had months and months to work on this. Why haven't our politicians focused on some of those solutions as opposed to pushing this single savior that is meant to be the vaccines? I think Canadians are getting tired. We've listened for long enough. And over again, our politicians, our health experts, and the media that support them have shifted the goalposts over and over again, promising that we'll get through this if only we listen to them. And we've listened to them, and yet we're still not out of this. How much longer are we going to continue to listen to these policymakers?
Making sure all eligible Canadians get vaccinated. That is how we avoid further entirely preventable lockdowns.
That when people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected.
From Pfizer is a report that confirms the vaccine's effectiveness in fighting the coronavirus.
Numbers, you're going to have breakthrough infections, right? So something is 95%, effective. We've got.
As more people get vaccinated, levels of COVID-19 infection decline in communities.
The majority of those vaccines are coming from Pfizer-BioNTech. New data shows it's highly effective after just one dose.
This is one of the encouraging aspects about the efficacy of the vaccine. It'll either protect you completely against infection. If you do get infected, the chances are that you're going to be without symptoms, and the chances are very likely that you'll not be able to transmit it to other people.
Chairman and CEO of Pfizer, and congratulations.
All that, but the science behind it, the fact that we know now that these vaccines are highly, highly effective, number one. Number two, they're really, really good against variants. We could turn this around and we could do it efficiently and quickly if we just get those people vaccinated.
This is up there as one of the greatest scientific achievements of all time. So I guess the first question is, how did you do it?
You get vaccinated and you're really quite safe from getting infected.
If you're vaccinated, you really don't need to worry about getting it in a way that's serious or transmitting it.
That is true. That is correct, Chris. You know, what is going on now is both entirely predictable, but entirely preventable.
People who are vaccinated have a dramatically lowered risk of hospitalization.
According, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine is about 80% effective after just one dose.
And congratulations.
We should not be waffling on this. It's too critical.
I don't think I did it. I think it was a whole group of brilliant scientists.
That even if you do get a breakthrough infection when you're vaccinated, the chances of your transmitting it to someone else is exceedingly low. The risk is extremely low of getting infected, of getting sick, or of transmitting it to anybody else. Full stop.
I don't think I did it. I think it was a whole group of brilliant scientists.
This recommendation was to assure people that when they get vaccinated, they can feel safe,
right,
whatever circumstance they're under.
So I guess the first question is, how did you do it?
We have a great vaccines, more than one, 3, and they're safe and they're highly effective.
To explain them the consequences of not getting a vaccine shot.
Vaccines, saying they're the only way out of this crisis, and Canada should start to have a conversation now about mandatory vaccines.
ICUs filling up, and almost all of this is preventable.
Doses of mRNA, a third boost. There's no doubt, based on the data we've seen.
We know that the vaccine can present in very severe illness for people who are unvaccinated, and it increases people's risk of death dramatically. So
it is incredible, I think, that we have such an efficacious tool.
You nailed it, Chris. That's correct.